The story of Pinocchio, written by Carlo Collodi, a prominent Freemason, hides its true meaning in symbolism. I made this video in the purpose of exploring the many occult symbols so we can get to unravel more truth that this interesting story keeps esoteric. I will be using throughout the whole video the Disney version of the story and the game adaptation Lies of P. Pinocchio starts as a lifeless puppet, created by Geppetto and the wish that his creation breathes life. His prayer is one day answered by a blue fairy, also named Sophia Monad, and the game adaptation, an interesting name that we will soon explore. She then gives Pinocchio the instructions he needs to become a real boy, and our puppet begins his journey. This creation story parallels one that for the longest time only a few initiated were exposed to. Many know the mainstream Adam and Eve creation story, but there was always another version kept and hidden through many means from the Catholic Church. I am talking about the Gnostic creation story. In context, Gnosticism thrived alongside the Roman Church until it was declared heretical and banned by Emperor Constantine in 325 AD. With the canonization of the Orthodox Bible, Gnostic texts were deemed heretical and destroyed or hidden. By the turn of the next century, Gnostics were persecuted and hunted down as heretics. The Gnostics believed in a single supreme God, referred to by the ancient Greeks as agnostos theos, meaning the unknown or unknowable God. This God, also called the monad, was ultimate and perfect, existing beyond human comprehension. Described as limitless, unfathomable, immeasurable, invisible, eternal, and unnameable. This monad created a group of spiritual beings known as aeons, who resided in a heavenly realm called the Pleroma. Among these aeons was a goddess named Sophia, who desired to create a divine being without a male partner, and without the approval of the monad. She gave birth to a flawed being named Yaldabaoth, described as having a serpent's body and a lion's head. This being, also known as the Demiurge, became a tyrannical creator god. He produced powerful minions called archons, and together they created a flawed world that mirrored the Pleroma. The Demiurge and his archons tried to create humans, but failed to animate their bodies. Seeing an opportunity, Sophia and other aeons, with the approval of the monad, bestowed a divine spark upon humanity, bringing them to life. This divine spark made humans purer and more powerful than the Demiurge, which angered him. In retaliation, he made humans mortal and placed them in a paradisical realm called the Garden of Eden, filled with material distractions to keep them ignorant of their divine nature. According to Gnostic texts, the Demiurge, identified as Yahweh or Jehovah in the Old Testament, falsely presented himself as the supreme God. The Gnostics believed that Yahweh was a lesser god, a tyrannical being who declared himself the only god to hide the existence of the monad. Gnostic texts such as the Apocryphon of John describe the Demiurge's jealousy and the creation of humanity to steal their divine light. Sophia and other aeons helped breathe life into Adam, giving humans a divine spark. The Demiurge, realizing Adam's enlightenment, placed him in the Garden of Eden to keep him ignorant. The garden's pleasures were traps to distract humans from their true divine nature. In the Gnostic view, Lucifer, which means the light bearer, was an angel of pure light, and he was sent by the unknowable God to enlighten humanity. In the form of a serpent, Lucifer offered Adam and Eve the forbidden fruit, revealing their divine origins and exposing the Demiurge's deceit. This act of enlightenment was seen as liberating humanity from the Demiurge's control. The Roman Orthodox Church, according to Gnostic belief, removed the true God from the Bible and replaced him with the Demiurge. The loving God of the New Testament and the vengeful God of the Old Testament were seen as two different entities. Gnostics like Marcion argued that the God of the Old Testament was not the God of the New Testament, but the Roman Church insisted otherwise. According to them, by demonizing Lucifer and associating him with Satan, the Roman Church transformed the liberating figure of Gnostic belief into a monster. Now we can see why the Catholics were not happy with the Gnostics, so they had to go underground and be smart about how they practiced their faith, and one way was through secret societies. When we are talking about occult, esotericism, and secrecy, secret societies is the first thing that goes in mind. Well, guess what? We already established that Carlo Collodi, the original author of Pinocchio, was a well-known Freemason, but also Walt Disney was initiated into the Order of Demolay while he was a teenager. It is basically Freemasonry youth group. When he received the Legion of Honor Award, which is Demolay's highest adult recognition, he sent that message of thanks to the order.
I feel a great sense of obligation and gratitude toward Demolay for the training it has given me.
In Lies of P, for instance, the symbolism tells it all. Every chest has the Freemasons' famous square and compasses. The bag that Pinocchio carries has it. Some buildings have it, and we can also observe the jacket and ring on Geppetto's finger, showing his affiliation to the order. I won't get into it in this video, but what I'm saying is that secret societies were a safe space for Gnostics to practice and explore their belief. In Lies of P, there is also the Alchemist, led by Simon Magus, which is most likely a direct recreation of the historical and mythical Simon Magus, the Gnostic magician of the 1st century. The thematic parallels are too strong to be a coincidence. Here's a breakdown of the links between the alchemist leader and the father of heretics. In Gnostic tradition, Simon Magus was a sorcerer who claimed to be the great power of God. He was the ultimate rival to the apostles, attempting to buy the power of the Holy Spirit, hence the term simony. Similarly, Simon Magus rejects the natural order and the petrification disease as a curse, viewing it instead as a path to evolution. Both characters represent the human desire to transcend humanity through forbidden knowledge and willpower rather than divine grace. In Gnosticism, Simon Magus travels with a woman named Helena, whom he claims is the reincarnation of Sophia, which again is the personification of wisdom who fell from the divine realm and became trapped in matter. Similarly, in the game, Simon Magus holds Sophia captive. He uses her ergo, which is her divine spark, to fuel his ascension to godhood. And just as Magus claimed he was the only one who could rescue or utilize Sophia's power, Magus views his control over Sophia as the key to the new world. The word Magus means magician or sorcerer. The game's devs change it to Manus, which is Latin for hand. This fits the game's motive of hands, the legend's arm, the hand of God relic, and the physical act of reaching for divinity. By naming him Manus, the developers anchor him and the physical world of Lies of P, while keeping the phonetic echo of Magus for those familiar with occult history. Also, Simon Magus was often accused by early church fathers of being a deceiver who used illusions to appear holy. Manus embodies this by farming his horrific experiments as salvation. He creates a blue world that is essentially a Gnostic nightmare, a realm where physical bodies are discarded for a collective artificial spirit. Another link worth looking at is that the alchemists were previously led by Valentinus Monad, another interesting name most likely named after Valentinus of the 2nd century, which he was the best known and for a time most successful early Christian Gnostic theologian. The name Pinocchio literally translates to little pine cone. In esoteric traditions, the pine cone is a symbol of the pineal gland, often referred to as the third eye or the Ajna chakra. For Gnostics, this aligns with the New Testament verse, "If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light." Pinocchio's journey is, quite literally, the awakening of this pine cone, or spiritual consciousness. In the Disney version, Pinocchio is this little boy, and he's full of all the ignorance that people have when they're young, and all the things that are titillation in life which when we're young, we're prone to being drawn into. At Pleasure Island, the children enjoy themselves, while being distracted from true life. They don't realize they are being turned into donkeys, a traditional symbol for the ego and the beast of burden. The donkey is known as stubborn, and here it represents the children being transformed into slaves for the power structures manipulating them, ruled by their passions rather than thinking for themselves. They become easy to subjugate or manipulate. Within all initiatory traditions, the first stage is learning to subdue one's passions. This does not mean eliminating them, but rather directing them toward constructive outcomes so one does not become a slave to them. As long as you are ruled by impulse, there will always be those who put shiny things before you to manipulate your lower nature. As long as they haven't learned to subdue their passions and use them as an energy for transformation instead of being drowned in by them, then, well, they're going to end up becoming slaves. They're going to become a beast of burden. One of the things that Pinocchio then does is he actually has to journey into the deep. And the initiated tradition, this was always represented by some sort of a baptism or illustration by water. Water represented the emotions, it represented the passions, and in fact an esoteric tradition and Gnostic tradition and the symbolism of the Bible, for example, the idea of being able to walk on water represented the ability to stabilize your emotions so that you could lift yourself up to accomplish greater things. And of course Pinocchio hasn't learned to do this, and so he's put in this position where he needs to stand for something bigger than himself. And he realizes that Geppetto loved him and had brought him into this world and was his parent, and that he had a responsibility to try to find Geppetto with the cricket, which of course represents his conscience. Geppetto's been swallowed by a whale, sometimes referred to as monstro. And in the Torah or Bible, of course, there are echoes of this in the story of Jonah, in which Jonah is swallowed by a whale. And he learns many mysteries there, and then he comes out renewed and becomes a kind of a savior for his people. Well, it's a similar story with Pinocchio. He has to venture into the deep and has to be swallowed by the whale. Pinocchio also has to come to realize the importance of what's keeping them in there. I mean, the water is keeping them in there, but to escape, he utilizes the breath, which in symbolic tradition represents the mind and higher learning. This is not the mere memorization of facts, but the recognition of a greater consciousness behind reality. The first step toward gnosis, or waking up, and of course the symbol for gnosis traditionally was fire or light. And this is the next stage that Pinocchio has to do. He has to literally make a fire in the belly of the whale, to get out of the whale itself. And when he does this, he saves Geppetto, he risks his own life to save Geppetto. And he ends up dying. But because of his conscience, and because of his love, because of his recognition of the bigger order of things, then of course we come back to the blue angel who turns Pinocchio into a real boy. This is the path of the Gnostic, the path of mastery. We begin as ignorant, impulsive children, prone to manipulation and addicted to crutches. Eventually we must shed these to understand the universal science behind creation. When the lower self dies, the higher self attains gnosis. Pinocchio becomes a real boy, because he develops a true heart and conscience, bringing not only his salvation but the salvation of Geppetto. Gnostics teach that all myth went to this hero's journey. Even the story of Jesus, where he goes to this same transformation, and of course Jesus rides the donkey into Jerusalem, and it represents him overcoming that lower nature and controlling it to ride into the Holy Land. He's not getting rid of this ego, rather he's using it as a vehicle to ride into the holy place. And Pinocchio does the same thing. I mean, he ends up overcoming his lower nature and his donkey nature ends up gone, ultimately becoming a real boy. But he has to go through the symbolic death and awakening. Within the Christian tradition, Pinocchio's transformation mirrors the Greek concept of anastasis. While often translated as resurrection, anastasis is the opposite of stasis, which means sleep. It means to wake up. For the mystic Christian or Gnostic, this is the process of waking from a zombie-like slumber to our true divinity. Instead of being driven by impulse or blind authority, we must wake up to the Christos or universal consciousness within us. According to Gnostics, this is something that everyone needs to wake up to. And it doesn't matter what religion you are, Gnostic teach that all myth point to this journey. This is the hero's journey, and we certainly find it within the story of Pinocchio. And as he wakes up, his third eye opens up and he's a new boy. He's a new person, he attained mastery. He becomes the Christos rather than just a Christian. He becomes the awakened Christ. This is the second coming of the Christ. It is when each and every one of us individually goes through this journey and eventually wakes up. So the story of Pinocchio is much deeper. There's much greater levels to it. Collodi had been initiated into this language, the symbolic language, and he tried to incorporate it in the story. He left this story for us now to use as a metaphor for our own lives as we personally make this journey toward awakening. Also in Masonic and esoteric traditions, the journey from a rough ashlar, which is an unformed stone, to a perfect ashlar, a finished stone, is often broken down into specific stages of initiation. These stages align almost perfectly with Pinocchio's transformation from a block of wood to a living boy.
forget.